Hello, in this video I'm going to cover the game between Jan-Krzysztof Duda and Richard Rapport from the round 1 of Tata Steel. We had a very interesting game and a really beautiful ending. It began as a London, but not the classical London. Rapport here chose to play bishop f5, not systems with c5 and knight c6 and so on and so on. He chose a symmetrical approach with bishop f5, and here Duda chose, I think, the right approach to somehow punish bishop getting out from c8 to get c4 with queen b3 next. And Rapport plays e6, first e3 by Duda. After e6 it was possible to go for queen b3, but maybe he didn't want to get into some complex positions after dc4, queen b7, bishop e4. Black still has some activity. He wanted to just develop quickly with e3, and here Rapport plays knight bd7. Also interesting line was to go bishop b1 and get the check on b4. For example, if rook b1, then bishop b4, king e2, and we have interesting trade-off. Black got white's king to be in the center still, but also white has a bishop pair now. Now the bishop on b4 is a bit exposed. So if black captures on c4, then there is queen a4, knight c6, knight e5, and we have some kind of Ragozin in this line. I like this position for white very much, because after, let's say, knight d5, you can take on c6, and after queen d7 to go rook c1 and target the c pawn. And I don't see anything wrong with this position. If he takes with the queen, then there's always bishop b4, king d1, because if knight d2 in both cases leads to knight e4. So king d1 could be played, but after bishop d6 I think this is okay for black as well. White doesn't have a bishop pair, and white's king is still in the center, still has some problems to deal with. I think it's playable for both sides. But Rapport didn't choose this. He chose knight bd7. And now queen b3. Time to hit on b7. And Rapport chose bishop d6. And bishop g3 by Duda. Queen capturing on b7 is very risky, I would say, because after bishop f4, ef, rook b8, the b2 pawn will fall, but also a7 falls. But still, white would have some issues with development in this case. Let's say knight d2, castling. If queen a3, queen b8 happens, and it's not so easy to develop for white. If bishop b2, there's always knight e4, very unpleasant. And the point is that after capturing, there's rook b1. And after this, queen d1, bishop d1, queen e4. Next is going to be dc4, and black is even better here. So after queen b8, bishop d3 leads to knight e4 again. This position doesn't look very pleasing for white, so queen b7 overall looks a bit sketchy. So bishop g3 looked like a more solid approach. And now it was time for Rapport to take on c4, bishop c4, and he went rook b8, finally defending this pawn and preparing b5 on the next move, because the queen is pinned if bishop takes, so the pawn is actually not for free. Duda continues with knight c3, and now b5. Now it's not possible to capture with the knight. With some idea like a6, knight d6, cd, and just going back to a3, because after knight b5 you can just input bishop g3 first. And after hg, then to go a6. Not c6 because of knight d6. And if king e7, just go queen a3 or capture on f5 and then going queen a3 check. But you just input this exchange of bishops and go a6. So bishop has to go back to e2. Castling, rook d1, queen e7, preparing e5 next. So that's why Duda plays knight e5, also heading towards c6. And now b4. Rapport just ignores this threat, and Duda doesn't play knight c6, he plays knight a4. The reason why he doesn't play knight c6 is that after this, black can just capture on c3. And if knight e7, bishop takes. Now you cannot capture on c3 because of bishop b4, losing the queen. After queen c4, then there is this c-pawn, which is very dangerous, very annoying for white. And after rook c1 to go knight b6. If you capture on c7, then you go into some trap with knight d5, and the queen is not very comfortable there. After this, maybe queen c6 is the best, but there's bishop b4, and after this, bishop b4. The queen is just getting harassed all the time. If, let's say, queen b5, then there's bishop d2. And the whole position is really unpleasant for white. Knight c6 isn't good for white at all. Also, a move like knight b5 is interesting, but black can capture like in the game and go knight e4. And I think that after he captures on g3, he should be fine. It's going to be a good game for black. So he went for knight a4, and now black took d5 and knight e4. He tries to liquidate the bishop pair, which is the main strength in this case. And Duda chose to give up the pawn, which is a very interesting idea, but very clever one. Rapport took, and now knight c5 first. He wants to exchange this knight, which can jump to c5 first. After this f4 was maybe too weakening. Here Duda chose a different approach. He wanted to go king f2, to give up this pawn, but to play on this passive bishop on f5, and also to have some control on d file. So after queen e5, he went for rook d7, and from now on it was white who had an initiative, but still black is the one who is a pawn up. He plays a5, trying to support the b4 pawn, rook hd1, and now h5, making some loft for the king, and also hinting that he would go h4, queen h2 next. Now e4, trying to limit the bishop to close this diagonal, bishop g6, now rook from d1 to d2, defending the b2 pawn, so the queen can go from b3, let's say, to e3. And here Rapport plays actively, he plays h4. He doesn't want to sit and wait for things to happen, he plays something concrete, he plays h4, takes, and now queen h2. The idea I mentioned before. Now bishop f1, queen h4, and now g3. This was the whole point of bishop f1, to have g3 and bishop g2, in case some check happens. But Rapport didn't play this, he played queen h5. Even though it was better to go queen h2, forcing the bishop to be passive on g2. After queen h5, queen went to e3. Black goes with c5. I think around here things begin to go wrong for Rapport, but it isn't so easy to find a way to propose something normal for him, because this bishop is out of place completely, and moves like f6 are always very risky because they expose g7. The 7th rank becomes really vulnerable to white's rooks. The engine proposes something like f5 in this position, but it's so unnatural to play something like this that it's not a wonder that black didn't play it. For example, something like capturing, even giving up the pawn is considered here, and hitting on f3 on the next move. If bishop g2, then to put even more pressure on f3, and after f4 to avoid some sacrifices on f3 to go queen h2. Rapport plays c5, king g2, freeing the bishop to go to c4, covering all the entry squares on the h file. And now a4 by Rapport, bishop c4, and here he plays a3. Duda blocks it with b3, of course, because if he allows opening up the b file, it allows rook b1 followed by queen h1. So naturally he blocks the position on the queen side by b3, and now practically speaking this majority is useless because the bishop blocks everything, and it's standing on this excellent square on c4, always hitting on e6. And now Rapport plays queen e5. And now Duda offers a trade of queens with queen f4. Now if black doesn't accept this, let's say queen c3, the queen is quite bad here. There's also a danger of getting trapped in this case. So maybe that's the reason why Rapport chose to take on f4, gf. And now again, this bishop is extremely bad. You can never untangle with f6 because e6 is hanging and the bishop remains a prisoner for the remainder of the game. Now he tried bishop h5 to have at least some target, in this case f3 pawn, king g3, and now g6, a very strange move. The bishop has no squares after g6. For example, something like king h7 would be the most resilient, but even after that, f5 is very strong, and after capturing, king goes to f4, there's danger of rook h2 next. It's not easy. After king g3, he played g6, and now first prophylaxis with rook d3. Why is this move played? Well, because you want to go king h4, king g5 as white, so you want to keep f3 defended. Rook b8 was played by Rapport, and now king marches towards g5, f6. Black can do just king g7, king g5, rook h8, and now rook c7. He wants to double on the 7th rank. Now black offers a trade, white declines, rook e8, and now again rook d7. This was the move 38, so white tried to play it until the move 40 because he's gaining more time after move 40. Rook hf8, and now rook c7. It was probably the best to go rook c8 here. He didn't play this move, and let's say after rook cd7 to go back to e8 to stop bishop e6. But even then, after e5, it looks really, really bad for black. Rook h8, rook a7. It's a really, really unpleasant position because now you either allow rook d7 with targeting f7 next and followed by bishop e6, or you just exchange pair of rooks like this and allow rook d7, after which if you want to defend e6 by rook e8, then f5 is possible. Now the pawn on g6 is overloaded. If you take with the e-pawn, then rook f7 and the e-pawn is very strong. If gf, then bishop hangs. If bishop takes on f3, then there's fe6 and all the pawns just drop. In a very tough position, Rapport made a huge mistake, which made it even easier for Duda to convert this. He played rook h8, and after rook dd7, he went back to f8, but after f5, he resigned. Because now if you take on f5, you can take first on f7, and after all these exchanges, going back to, let's say, h8, there's king h6 and a checkmate on h7. I'll make more videos on Tata style games. That's it. Thank you so much for watching and see you soon. Bye.